Okay, so it has been a long day. I am hot and I'm sweaty and I've lifted a bunch of things and it is the end of my work day, so we're going to try and do this video quicker than I'd probably like to spend on it, but I figured I should probably respond to this sooner rather than later. So if you follow online church circles or that kind of stuff online, you have no doubt heard of some of the controversy that is surrounding Life Church's Bible app. What I'm talking about is some specific instances that have been reported to individuals such as Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes, where people are, specifically kids, are using the social media aspects of the app, the ability to share Bible verses and connect with other people who have accounts on the app, that they are using those things to basically transmit naked pictures of themselves or to get in contact with people who can share other images that are pornographic, that simply have Bible verses kind of tagged on the bottom, using their feature of being able to put images with Bible verses from the built into the app. It's the Bible Lens, I think is what it's called, inside the app itself. This is troubling news. The Bible app is one of the most downloaded apps in the planet, and it's used by countless churches as kind of the de facto thing, where people will pull out their smartphone and they will, instead of having a Bible in their church service, they're being encouraged to go to the Bible app, and lo and behold, it's being used for things just like other social networks are. And this is troubling and problematic, given how ingrained into modern church culture this specific Bible app is. It's not even a myriad of electronic Bibles that's being used. It's just, if you're talking about the Bible app, you all know exactly which one I'm talking about. It's from Life Church. Everybody uses the same thing. It might as well be the modern day equivalent of, saying King James only. When you talk about which version of the scriptures you go to YouVersion, because that is the Bible app that everyone uses. And that this kind of thing is happening on it is troubling. But unlike a lot of the Christian pundits and influencers and everyone who's going to blow this up and talk about how, it's messed up and all that kind of stuff, or criticize Life Church for what they're, doing in the support and production of this app and stuff like that, I'd like to talk about how we got here and what's actually going on, because how we're reacting to this problem for the first time also shows some of our ignorances and some of our shortcomings as a church when it comes to having a theology of tech and a theology of online anything. So in the description, you're going to see two videos. One's by Youth Group Chronicles, where they kind of joke about this and talk about it as kind of like the first place where I heard about this. And then a second post from Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes, where he actually talks about the incident that they're kind of talking about afterwards and whatnot. This is going to show you how the kids are able to find inappropriate content through the social network aspect of the app. And so while there's nothing explicit, this is kind of triggering. So I'm not a fan of trigger warnings, but I understand there's parents out there. So don't watch this with your kids if you don't want them to know how to do this stuff. And it would be my hard recommendation as a father and a theologian that because this now exists on the app, this possibility, and because it is a social network, you are connected to everyone who is connected. This is one of those times where, you don't let your kids use the Bible app of all apps, that you give them a paper copy and you say, if you want to read the Bible, this is how you're going to read the Bible. And if you want to talk to your friends, you're going to do it on the phone or in person. What you're not going to do is have an untraceable way to see what is essentially child porn. Or get connected with adults who are essentially looking for that kind of thing, even if it's attached to a Bible app. This is me saying that you should not be using the Bible app right now. If Life Church changes how they do things and puts some controls in place, which is something that Chris McKenna in his video argues for, that's a different story. But right now, no, this is a reject, and I would encourage you to do so as a parent and a theologian. But what are we talking about? What is the problem here, and how did we get to this thing? Well, one of the problems that we're talking about this kind of thing is that you can't really talk about these topics and ask your audience, like I'm about to go do research, without exposing them to things that would be just as problematic and just as sinful to view. When we talk about porn online, there's no really way to, decide where the line for porn is without getting up to, what you're going to be exposing yourself to be pornography. And that kind of is the crunch point of all this, because Life Church's motto when it comes to online ministries is anything short of sin. And we get to see that, the plain, very predictable outcome of having that kind of outlook and kind of like rubric for how you decide if you're going to do ministry or not, is that you're going to come colliding with a kind of sin that you basically had no protections for with your app, because that was your rubric, anything short of sin. Because in the places where you thought that you were nowhere near sin, you were actually really close, because your rubric was anything short of sin is where you're going to go to pursue people for the gospel. But you can't talk about this stuff. And this is actually something that has been known about the internet and social media for ages by everyone, presumably but the church. This is something that existed in kind of internet culture when it was back in like the forums, and if you're old enough, kind of like the 4chan days of the internet. There is not a whole lot of good content in those places where you could basically just find these kind of like collections of people all surrounded by, a common interest or a common, gathering and stuff like that. And they created a whole language and even have a set of rules to the internet as a joke that have become prophetically true when it comes to pornography and, the prevalence of it online. One of those rules being Rule 34. Now, do not Google that. Do not go anywhere close to that term. You cannot Google that and not have explicit sexual images show up. It's designed that way, and the rule is about that. The rule states that if it exists, there is porn of it online. That, you can find pornography about anything. You can find it about books, about airplanes, and apparently about Bible apps too. That everything online ends up being porn at one way or another, and it is prophetically right. This is why on every social media there's porn. This is why there's every kind of niche imaginable of porn. It's because that's what happens online. Things turn into porn. And I know back when they wrote the list of jokes, or list of rules, there's a ton of jokes in it, but it is prophetically true that if it exists online, there will be porn of it at one point or another. I don't know why it's true. I imagine it has something to do with our sinful nature as humans, but that's a rule. So when we talk about this was basically foreseen for decades prior to the eventuality of child pornography existing on the YouVersion Bible app social network. The internet knew that this was going to happen. It knew that it was very much a possibility, and it's very clear that it has not crossed the minds of the people who are developing that app that this could happen, and that's because they view the internet differently. Another thing being talked about this, Chris talks about it once. I think he refers to the moms saying the term, though I am hearing it from other people who have commented on it. This is the idea of a soft or a shadow social media. This doesn't exist. What this is an attempt to kind of soften the blow of what is a blind spot in most people's relationship to the internet. The second you have the ability for a content creator to be able to get content to people who are consuming that content because they downloaded an app or made an account on a website in order to get that content, that's social media. That is going straight to the consumer, going straight to the fan base, going straight to the congregation with your stuff. Okay, that is social media. So from its inception, the Bible app has been social media. It is not the Bible. It is social media with a Bible grafted onto it. Okay? And if you don't see it that way, I encourage you to just take a long, hard look at what the Bible actually is in real life when you take the internet away, and if that's the same thing, because that brings us to our next kind of topic and our kind of like the heart of this issue of what's going on, is that the underlying rule of play here is something that I've termed aesthetic equivalencies. And it's something that's common between what the Bible app's trying to do as, an app and, a desire to have the Bible online. What the online church does, especially VR church and various other incarnations of church, but also what pornography does, which is the key aspect, because these things all play in the same sandbox. They all play by the same rules, but at least two of them think that the other one is playing by different rules, and they're not. They're all playing by the same rules. They're all following the same script. They're all doing the same kinds of things, which is why this happened, which is why we have this problem on a YouVersion app in the first place. This idea of aesthetic equivalencies is what porn does. Aesthetic equivalencies is the, giving you a picture or a video or something aesthetic that you can kind of put your attention, put your resources, put your sacrifices to, that is the equivalent, or that you're making the equivalent of something that's real and good for yourself. Pornography is the aesthetic equivalency of honest sexuality, of good sexuality. It pulls out those things and makes it into a consumable product so that you can use it. Well, that's exactly what the online church does, and exactly what the online Bibles do. What they're doing is giving you something that is pulled out from what should be a community and saying, no, this exists online because we can give you the aesthetic properties of it. You can interact with a screen and with content, and then that becomes the equivalency of what would have happened outside of screens, apart from screens, away from screens. And then when it comes to the Bible, that's exactly what happened here. We took what should have been a book, something tangible, something real, something that you can't get ads on, that people cannot find you on, something antisocial, because books are antisocial. They can be shared in a social context. They can all be read by people in that social context. But when you're reading the text in print, when your eyes are reading text, nothing else is happening except you and the Word of God. And that's where the Holy Spirit can, educate you, can bring text to life, can speak to you, can teach you. That's what's happening there. That's not what the Bible app is. The Bible app has the text of the Bible, but it gives you options to do things with that Bible that aren't locked into a print medium that has existed for thousands of years, and I would argue was given to us by God, by Him writing on the first tablets that contained the law. God started this. God showed us how to write scriptures down, and we have continued it ever since. But now what we have is something where you can take the Bible, and in the same thing that has the Bible, you also have ways to add to the Bible by putting pictures to it. You also have ways to subtract from the Bible by taking verses and copying them out. You have ways to be in charge of the Bible in a way that a book doesn't allow you, because it's a published work, and the ways a book doesn't allow you because it exists apart from what your interaction decides it's going to be able to do. So what you end up with is this aesthetic equivalency where you're looking to something that looks like the Bible because it has all the same words as the Bible, but acts very differently than what the scriptures actually do. Okay, you get to this place where you can do things with the scriptures that you wouldn't be able to do with pen and paper in a non-conspicuous way. And this is how porn works. This is why porn moved online from, the very risky and, obvious forms that it had before. This is the reason we have private browsing, is so that you don't have to have the history attached to purchases of pornographic material. This is how that works. The aesthetic equivalency of sexuality is what porn is. And it showed the framework for how the church was going to act online. And it's something a lot of people don't pick up on. There was online pornography before there were online churches. Okay, they led the way. We did not lead the way. We might want to think we led the way for how church was going to operate online, but at every step of the way, sin was there first. And that's because you can't view technology as amoral or neutral or something separate from humanity. Technology only shows up for us at the hands of sinners. Now, whether they're saved by grace or whether they're, damned to hell, okay, that doesn't change. Pornography is a great example of this, because it's existed for all of history. There have been examples of pornographic art, pornographic statues, pornographic, stories, all that kind of stuff. It exists because men and women have put it into the world through their creation, and they've used technological mediums to do that. And now that we get to the age of the internet, we think technology is somehow different, that it somehow transcends to a spot where it can be neutral, and it's not. It only gets made by sinners. It only gets run by sinners. Those sinners can be saved by grace, but it doesn't change the fact that evil people, fundamentally evil people that needed a savior to die for their sins, okay? Those kind of people are the ones that made the Bible app, okay? Jesus did not make the Bible app. Jesus made the Bible that the Bible app is borrowing its authority from, another term that we've talked about on this channel, that it's borrowing the authority from it in order for its validation, okay? It needs the borrowed authority of the Bible in order to make the Bible lens, the thing that's being used for this evil thing. It needs the authority of the scriptures to be accessible so that you can take your verse, take it out of the context of the Bible and put it onto a picture so that you can share it with your friends as if it's more meaningful than actually knowing the verse in your heart. Okay, that's a nice little trick that you did with photo manipulation. But know what happens with photo manipulation? People put the Bible verses on photos that don't, line up with the scriptures. That was the first and most obvious step, is that you could take a Bible verse about anything, about, the disciples boarding a boat with Jesus during the Gospels, and you could put it on the picture of a plane. Well, that's not a picture of what's happening, and it's not a picture that helps you understand what's happening exactly, because you're adding to the scriptures there, something you were told not to do in the scriptures. Okay? So it's the natural consequence of this is that if you think that technology is somehow neutral, and you think that you can, operate with technology in a neutral way and are a sinner, you are eventually going to get yourself into a position where you unintentionally sin, where you unintentionally build a network for horrible sins to exist simply because you were trying to do something under false pretenses, under false understandings of what the internet is and how it works. So sin is baked into technology. There's every aspect of technology that we have is sinful in some degree or another, can be used righteously, but wasn't designed to be used righteously or not. It was designed in this kind of amorphous middle that, only has hands that have sinned working on them. To the point where, and I really want you to get this, none of that comes with us when we go to heaven. None of that comes with us when we pass on to glory, when we go to new creation, when at the end of history, when we all get told, "Well done, our good and faithful servant," or "Depart from me, I never knew you." None of our technology comes with us. No iPhones, no computers, no archives, and I would go so far as to say not even what we have as the scriptures comes with us when we go to the presence of God, because then we will have his word perfectly. Not translated into English when we don't know Greek, where there's discrepancies on how things get translated, where people can argue about it, when people can sin against each other because of their views on the Bible. None of that comes with us to heaven, because the Word of God is in heaven. It's waiting for us. It has prepared a place for us. So when we look at this stuff, yeah, this is a natural consequence of where this was only going to go. And it is not a one-way street. It's not just being progressed by where we're going. It's progressing the other way too. Now that this is an option, now that we know that you can have this kind of sin, that you can have pornography mingled with the Bible online, how long till pornography starts mingling with the Bible online on its end? Right now it's on our end. What happens when we get the First United Church of OnlyFans? What happens when they realize that that's a vastly untapped market of really connecting with the fans of pornography? Because Christian men struggle with pornography in droves. And once they get connected, and once the same kinds of perversion that are happening to the text here start happening to our theology, and people start celebrating porn use the same way that deviant sexualities are being celebrated in the church, it's only a matter of time. And we've seen this. And one of the things that is driving it is our naive adoption of technology without a theological perspective. This naive sense that technology is somehow morally neutral, even though it's being made by sinners and used by sinners and used against sinners and for sinners. That somehow that it's morally neutral. I did a great talk a while back with Doug Smith about this, where we talked about the moral implications of using certain predatory apps and how you can navigate that in ministry. I really encourage you to check out that video. I'll try and put a link to that as well in the description. But I really wanted just to highlight that this is exactly where this was always going to go, because we don't look at technology the right way. We look at technology on a face value only, and it leads us to problems, especially when we have such fast and loose rubrics for how we do ministry. Knowing that Life Church's motto for how they approached online church was anything short of sinning. This is the natural outcome of that. And it sucks. It sucks that they're going to have to be dealing with this. Anyone who's involved with this, I want you to know that I'm praying for you right now. And I want anyone who's feeling inclined to respond or put comments in some of these videos and stuff like that, stop what you're doing and find out who's working on this problem from Lifeway right now and pray for them. You will have people who thought they were making an app about the Bible now having to sort through child pornography and get it off their site as a response to some of these actions. They are going to need to be bathed in prayer to help them deal with the kind of ramifications of this and how to kind of progress so that it can still do work. Because as much as I might have qualms from a technical standpoint on the Bible app, as much as I might be able to see it, it still does good work. People are still coming to the gospel and coming to Christ through the Bible app because it's accessible. But it's very clear that this was able to happen at all, that there are some philosophical things that just haven't been sorted out, and that it's really been just fly by the seat of your pants. Or how did this kind of stuff happen? You'll see a lot of that in the second video with Chris McKenna. I will post a link in the description there. But a lot of that has to do with that. You'll see that this is not just one account that managed to squeak through. This is an endemic problem that's just kind of hiding in the shadows of this app that needs to be dealt with. And right now, as a parent, the best thing that you can do is give your kids one of these and get them off the Bible app. And that is a hard thing for a theologian to say, especially a parent and especially someone who has seen how powerful that app can work in a church setting. But it is no longer safe. So I don't think you should have it on your kids' phones. I don't think you should have it on your phones, not until this has been publicly addressed and publicly dealt with and measures put in place so that this can never happen again. And if that's not dealt with, then this app is the same thing as bringing pornography into your church during a church service, except that would be a real life equivalency as opposed to just an aesthetic equivalency. So start looking for those. Start looking for those in every aspect of your technological life and your faith life. What are these aesthetic equivalencies that are trying to kind of weasel their way in, that have convinced some people that they don't exist and that are basically operating in our world today, especially with the church online? Start looking for them, and I promise you, you will never unsee them. It's another rule of the internet. That's it for now. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care.